Hello, wildlings. I'm your Creepsmith, and you found my Fear Forge. Lucky you.
Hello, wildlings. Tonight's eerie exercise in erudition, the janitor's key. One day, a high school student got into his head what he thought was a genius idea. He'd find a way to stay overnight in his school, just to be able to say he did it. The idea of the story that it would make thrilled him, and he had no idea how right he was. The major problem in coming up with this plan was getting a key. He couldn't just hide in the corners the whole night. He wanted to explore. He also wanted to scope out the best places in the school for some after-school activities with any girls who might be interested. He began to think of himself as the king of the brick castle that he spent most of his time in. He just needed that key. The only people that he thought would have such a key to the entire school would be the janitors. They, of course, kept their keys on them and had a spare set in their break room. He went in during lunch when the janitors were on cafeteria patrol. He came into the break room and just picked up the keys. He'd figure out what they were for later. As he was walking out of the room, amazed that he'd actually gotten away with it, he walked right into one of the janitors. "What are you doing back there?" inquired the custodian. The kid stammered for a few seconds and ultimately decided to tell the truth. There was just something about the man that had said, "You can trust me." The janitor laughed. He said, "You know, I wanted to do the same thing when I was young. Something about having the whole place to myself. It was an intoxicating urge. I got caught, of course, and the old man expelled me, for lack of a better word. Then he took a key off his own key ring and gave it to the kid. It was odd. The kid couldn't properly tell what color the key was, and it seemed to keep changing even when he held it still. That key will open any door in the school for you. Enjoy, son." The kid couldn't believe his incredible luck. He ran off once the janitor had finished talking, but he thought he caught a whiff of something odd coming from the janitor, but he thought nothing of it. The guy did, after all, clean up after teenagers for a living. That night, the kid came out of the corner that he was hiding in. He'd told his parents that he was sleeping over at a friend's house. He promised the friend a little tour of all the secrets that he'd found in the school in exchange for covering for him. He went through the school, finding out what the teachers kept in their desks, playing with chemicals and fire in the chemistry room, and generally enjoying himself. He had no problems at all getting into any of the rooms, the desks, or even the lockers of the faculty or the children. He had to use a flashlight instead of turning the lights on, but that just heightened the thrill. Around 3 a.m, he decided to call it a night and sleep in the janitor's break room. He brought an alarm clock so that he could wake up in time to make his perfect escape. But if he was to be found by anyone, it would mean he would never be able to do this again. Plus, if he was caught by the janitor, he didn't think he'd get in as much trouble. He woke up early. He heard some thumping somewhere, but he couldn't tell where from. It sounded like footsteps. The smell that had come off the janitor permeated the air. The kid thought that it smelled familiar, but couldn't quite place it. He turned on his flashlight, pointed it around, and the beam fell on a figure in the corner. The kid let out a yell and dropped the flashlight. Of course it went out. As he was picking the flashlight up and preparing to run to beat the devil, he realized that he had hung his coat in that corner. "Oh, you dumbass," he said to himself. Now that the flashlight was out, he looked around, noticing that it was a little brighter. Morning already? No, a glance at the clock told him that it was a little over an hour after he'd fallen asleep. So what was making it brighter in here? He felt his way out of the office until he was in familiar territory. He took his hands off the walls, now walking fairly confidently. It seemed to be getting even brighter. Then it occurred to him. If the figure in the corner was his coat, what had made that thumping noise? He stopped and looked behind him. He saw a shadowy outline back there wearing his coat. Even though he couldn't see its face, he knew that the figure was smiling, and he ran like hell, aimlessly turning until he reached a stairwell, and down it he went. Funny, he didn't remember there being a stairwell going downward there, and he thought he was on the first floor. Well, too late to turn back now. As he ran down, it got brighter, and the faint odor that he detected was getting stronger. When he noticed the light flickering like a fire, he finally placed the smell. Sulfur. He looked around him, noticing the walls. They looked like cave walls with odd runes covering them. And now he saw the end of the stairs, and the figure at the bottom, waiting for him. The janitor looked up at him, smiled, and laughed. Ah, the Faustian bargain. I'm a little bit confused about the particulars of this one, though. Does it actually count as a deal with the devil if you don't know who it is you're talking to? I don't know. Anyway, stay scary, wildlings, and make the most of your nights.